What is up, dudes and lady dudes? Welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today, I've got a little news video coming at you, talking about a couple of new cards. 2 new cards revealed for Rise of the Duelist, the next core set coming after Eternity Code, which is pretty cool. So we got a couple of new cards that are, one of them's pretty nostalgic but cool, and the other one I think has a little more meta implications, but I think they're cool nonetheless. And yeah, so this card actually came out yesterday, but I've been having some scheduling issues, just stuff like with my family. Everybody's working at home now for obvious reasons, the state of the world, and so like uploading kind of shits on our internet a little bit, so I've been trying to schedule and it just didn't work out. So I missed it yesterday, but I'm actually going to be doing it today. So yeah, let's just get into it. All right, so this card is called Fury of Kyryu Shin. It's a classic card. It's like a classic sea serpent beater normal monster. It's cool. It's ugly. It's a water monster. That's what matters. So this is a normal spell card. It says you can only use each effect of this card's name once per turn. First effect says add 1 torrential tribute from your deck to your hand. And the second effect says if a water monster or monsters you control would be destroyed by a card effect specifically, you can banish this card from your graveyard instead. So this card is pretty cool. First off, searches Torrential Tribute. Torrential Tribute, other than Trap Trick, had never really been searchable before, and I guess Lilith, Lady of Lament. But now we just have a straight up search yourself a Torrential Tribute. And then the other effect is really cool because if you don't know, Torrential Tribute, when a monster is summoned, period, destroys every monster on the field. And so if you play water deck and you have water monsters on your field, this card just says, all my water monsters live, because it blanket protects all of them from 1 destruction, and because it says monster or monster, so it can actually protect everything at once as long as it's all one wave of a destruction. So really strong disruption combined with some nice protection if you are playing a water-based deck. It's a cool card. I don't think I like Torrential Tribute, and I think it's actually pretty good. It can be very high impact. I think it's better than stuff like Mirror Force, because that's just like locked to the battle phase. This can get your opponent in main phase 1 before they've actually set up everything, which I think is nice. But I do think it is a limited card. It's destruction, but it is mass destruction. I think it's cool. We'll have to see if it gets any other kind of support. But this is a cool card. I like it. Torrential Tribute is one of my favorite cards. I like it in Trap Tricks a lot. All right, and then the other card we have here is Just 1 Forbidden Drop. That is the name, Just 1 Forbidden Drop. It's a quick play spell card, and you can only activate 1 card with this card's name once per turn. All right, for what this card does, it says send any number of other cards from your hand and or field to the graveyard as cost. Okay, it's a dangerous cost. Choose that many effect monsters your opponent controls, and if you do, have their attacks also negate their effects. These changes last for the rest of the turn. Also, your opponent can activate any cards or effects in response to this card's activation that have the same original card type or types. That is monster, spell, or trap, as any card sent to the graveyard to activate this card. So this is kind of a lot. It's kind of a lot to wrap your head around, but pretty much, so as cost, you're sending cards from your hand or field to the graveyard, and then because that's cost, this card then decides what your opponent can even respond to this to. So they will be able to see what they can even attempt to respond with after you've sent stuff. So if you send a monster, a spell, and a trap to you from your hand or field to the graveyard to activate this card, your opponent cannot respond with anything, because they're not allowed to respond with a monster, they can't respond with a spell, they can't respond with a trap. There is no response they're allowed to have to this card, and then this card will then blanket negate however many monsters your opponent has, as well as cut their attacks in half until the end of the turn. Which is really nice, because this also does not target as cost or anything like that. It does just blanket negate a whole board, which is really cool, and makes him easily beat overable. I think this is a really interesting card. The problem, I think the big deal with this card will just be the cost. The cost is a lot. I would say this card's weary of being negated, but I have a feeling people are going to be sending a monster a lot of the time with this card, which means your opponent cannot negate this, and this card cannot with a monster. So whether they had Boral Savage, any generic monster negate, or if you send a trap that can't be negated by a trap card. Those are the 2 most popular ones. Spells usually can't just negate other spells. there. So if you're worried really about this just getting negated, it's usually monsters and traps are the bigger ones, but monsters are the most important, and that'll be most of the time. But this is pretty high impact. I mean, you got to think. That's the big thing there, is that like it just kind of turns off my board. It's almost like a pseudo Dark Ruler no more. But this can also turn off spells and traps from responding to it. I don't know. I think it's like okay. It does cut their attacks in half, so that's like the bonus over Dark Ruler no more. It does make a lot of stuff a lot easier to just get over. But I think the other thing is that you need to consider what deck you'd even be playing this in, because this is only till the end of the turn. So it may allow you to play, but like you need to be playing a deck that's high ceiling enough where you can just activate this, blanket negate everything, and even after having to send multiple cards from your hand or field to the graveyard, still having enough power to just summon enough to like rip through your opponent's stuff. Now you can still deal damage after this card. That's another reason why this is like interesting with Dark Ruler no more. I wouldn't be surprised if this is the kind of card where if you're playing an offensive enough deck, you can play this and Dark Ruler no more in the side, just to increase the chances of seeing a card that can just blanket negate your opponent's entire board, at least the monster side. And then kind of go from there. But it's a really cool card. I think the cost is brutal, in which Dark Ruler no more doesn't have, but this is a quick effect, which means you can also just set this and use this as a disruption. That's also another like really interesting way to use this, almost like Super Poly. It's probably better on your turn, but it can still be a really nasty disruption on your opponents. Because think just like activate this, send a monster, and then this is just essentially like an infinite impermanence. Like you just negated a monster on your opponent's board and cut them in half. That won't be as important because of like links and synchros and XYZs and all these. You have so easy ways to like get stuff off the field, but it could be depending on when you hit them. And yeah, I think it's a really interesting card. I'm really curious to see how much implication this could have on the metagame. I think this will be more of a side deck card than anything, unless you're playing a strategy that specifically really makes great use of this card. We'll have to see about that. But yeah, it's really cool. I think this is a cool card. So guys, let me know your thoughts on both of these. Really a fan of this, just really nostalgic card. Torrential Tribute's a really awesome like nostalgic card that like I'm glad it's getting some kind of synergy with cards now. And then this guy a little more meta impacting in my opinion, but we'll have to see how it goes. So like I said, let me know your thoughts below on these two new cards. Subscribe to the channel if you have not yet and you want to stay up to date on all Yu-Gi-Oh! News. You want to see my deck profiles. You want to see my discussion videos, whatever it is. Subscribe to the channel. I love you guys. Thank you for watching. Peace.